Let's try the Sicilian. No, let's go with the Caro-Kann. You just got juked. You just got juked. Alright, so French. Yeah, French. Caro-Kann advance. I was thinking French for a second there because there's an advance French, but advance variation of the Caro-Kann. My bad bishop is outside of my pawn chain. Let's throw my knights here and here, and then look for c5. Back up or play knight here? If I back up, why would I want to do that? To recapture with my knight? To recapture with my pawn? Let's back up. If he takes my bishop, I'm going to get the A file, or the H file. That's why I'm backing up there. That's the plan. He's the expendable bishop. That's the word I like to associate with this guy right here. The expendable bishop. I'm okay if a knight gets my light square bishop. It's my dark square bishop who's really more valuable. So c5, okay. c5 I could play. So let's do it. I need to make sure I could meet knight here with knight here and cover d6. This is very important, as otherwise knight d6 absolutely kills me. After pawn takes, I have this move knight c6 where I'm hitting c5 twice and e5 twice, and you can only defend one. So this is the way to go. Gotta play knight here. Just in the nick of time, my bishop needs to be here to defend. He's there to defend, and it's a free knight. Or is he? Does he come with the cost? He does come with the cost. Yes, he does. I wonder if my opponent even saw that. He moved c3 very quickly. So queen takes knight, knight check, king here, and maybe king here, and then king here. Maybe my king could hunt that knight right down. The other consideration is to play first pawn here, but you can be sure that after this, we'll have first knight takes bishop, pawn takes, and then the knight will run away here or drop into d6. So let's stay focused here. Let's go with what? Let's go with pawn takes might be interesting too. Pawn takes, pawn takes. Maybe I could get this check in first and then take the knight, so that after knight takes I could play king e7, and after knight takes rook I could recapture with the rook. So after pawn takes pawn, if pawn takes I could give this check and then take the knight and meet knight check with king e7. However, after pawn takes pawn, knight takes bishop. Pawn takes bishop. Knight takes rook, pawn takes pawn. It's very interesting. But is it necessary? Do I really need to complicate matters, or is there a cleaner approach where I could play without risk? I'm going to go with this approach because I'm scared. I like to play, not because I'm scared. Well, yeah, actually because I am scared. But maybe better stated, because I like to play positions where I have all the play and there's very little risk of losing, or where positions where I'm trying to play for two results, right? Either a win or a draw, where my opponent is the one who's on their heels. So apparently the knight is, my opponent's considering d6 or a3. If d6, I think I could take it and then win this pawn back without too much issue. Well, I'm definitely going to take it, so okay, well, we didn't have that. Is there any reason to maintain this tension? Does my pawn really have some idea of pushing here? I don't believe so. So let's resolve that tension right away. He's misplaced. He's boxed out due to my D pawn and A pawn. Control of these two. So he's the worst placed minor piece for white. I'm going to try to play off of that. I have this file. There might one day be some queen h4 move threatening mate on h2 and something lateral. So this pawn is dropping now. Pawn takes was needed, I'm pretty sure, in order to defend this square. And of these two knights, I'm going to take with the one that's furthest back, the one who's less active, and also I'm in a position if I need to take out the bishop, I could still be taking out the bishop. So I'm up a pawn in this position, and time-wise, material-wise, I'm up. The other two main factors, just the general considerations, are what? There's the material, there's time, and there's space. Space, I guess you could say I have a slight space advantage, but time-wise is the other thing, maybe the more important thing that I'm looking into. And I don't know that either of us really have an advantage in that area. So just take the bishop. Yeah, let's just take the bishop. Let's see how white recaptures. If you take with the pawn, I could throw in this check, and then white will have to go on castle. Taking with the queen hits my knight, but I had planned really just to come back here to a classic square counter-attacking move, and I think that this is good. I did consider also bishop d6, but I didn't like this idea of playing f4, and then when my knight moves, I'd be dropping g7, so just a counterattacking move. Bishop here, queen here, something focusing on this h2 square. This rook is active. Queen here is my first thought. I don't know that she has really a better square. Maybe she does. Let me get my bishop developed, and maybe I could take the knight. Not needed, really. Under a minute. Bishop d6, can't castle, I'm on h2, and this is going to be game over. This is leading to mate very soon. With bishop here. Let's check. I'm doing this so that there's eventually not a queen move right here. Yeah, that was just missed. That h2 square. The Bill Gates square, right? That's the maybe that's the Bill Gates square from now on. Right? The Bill Gates square? 2 million people know what I'm talking about. All right. Good game, Jan Pi. How this would have followed is there's some blocks you could be throwing in, but after a king here, there's the forced mate of rook check, king takes, queen h4 to h2. So let's back up. Something went wrong. Let's flip the board here. Caro-Kann advance. This is awkward. This is, I didn't say it during the game, but knight c3 is not a good square for the knight. You want to have this pawn free to move to reinforce your base point d4. This is important. If you're not able to maintain your pawn on d4, that means your e5 pawn becomes that much more difficult to defend. And as it turned out in the game, you ended up dropping the pawn. Now granted, there was a way that you could have been preventing me from capturing on e5, but nevertheless, you shouldn't be obstructing your c pawn. He wants to be able to move to reinforce your base point d4. So what might be a better move is bishop to e2. Maybe I could go one step further, actually, because I was talking about reinforcing your d5, your d4 pawn with c3, but there are also some lines where this pawn wants to play to c4, and the position can open up very quickly. Just running with this right here, if you play bishop e2, this is a common move, knight e7. After castles, another common move is knight d7. Basically throwing your knights right in front of your king and queen, and eventually on the black side I'd look to play c5. So again, running with bishop e2, knight e7, castle, knight d7, A move you could then be going with is knight d2, staying out of the way of the pawn, and then you're in a position to meet c5 with c3, or if you want to be a little bit more aggressive, you can play c4 and really blow up the position and try to take advantage of the fact that it's going to take me still a little bit before I can be castled. Right? If my knight's on e7, it still would take me a knight move, a bishop move, and, well, the castling move would take 3 moves before I'm castled. So, in short, this is something, and by the way, this is the short variation, is it not? After Nigel Short, he plays this knight f3, bishop e2 castles. But the quick summary here is you could be going forward with bishop e2. I get my knights to these two, you get castled, and when c5 is played, you could play c3 or c4. Definitely don't obstruct your c-pawn. You went after my light square bishop. You look to get into the d6 square, and I think best is to just simply not even give me the option of maybe capturing the knight. So just take my bishop right now. I'm thinking that that was just missed during the game. I could be wrong with how quickly c3 was played, because there was still some calculation needed with this fork and knowing if I could get the 2 minor pieces for the rook and things of that nature. But probably just take the bishop immediately. I gave your knight a kick, and maybe you could actually get away with this. Knight check, pawn, knight check, bishop takes, pawn here. If queen b8 or some knight move to try and hit the pawn, you do have bishop here. Maybe you could be making me struggle to track down that passed d6 pawn. I don't know. As it turned out in this game, at this point, you need to take with the pawn to keep e5, and as soon as that drops, the game is pretty much... it's a very important pawn. I know it's just a pawn, but it's a central pawn, and things are a lot more free. Your knight's struggling, and there's, without the pawn on e5, h2 is more accessible. That's just an additional benefit. But in short, you're dropping a pawn here. So pawn takes is pretty much needed. And if bishop check as a response, you could block with the bishop. There's no time to take here just yet because the bishop on b4 would be unprotected. So pawn takes, bishop check, bishop d2. I guess it's still uncomfortable for you after queen a5, but it's really getting all the way back to, I believe, this earliest point with the knight's deployment, not obstructing your c-pawn. Very important to take into account the structural changes. What pawn pushes I'm going to want to make. I'm going to want to strike at your base point, have your pawn free to reinforce that, and it's a tough road ahead at that point. Alrighty. Good game. Let's close out of this.